My mother dropped a bombshell on me last week. She decided to give her apartment to my brother, Mark, and his family, and then move in with my husband, David, and me. We have a house, a home we built from the ground up, while Mark still struggles to get his own place. But this generosity at my expense? Absolutely not. I couldn't believe the audacity, the sheer disregard for our lives, our space, our hard-won peace. The thought of her constant presence, her endless criticisms, her unwavering favoritism towards Mark made my stomach churn. This wasn't a loving gesture, it was an invasion, a calculated maneuver to maintain control, and I was not going to stand for it. This was my home, my sanctuary, and I would fight to protect it from her suffocating embrace. Indeed, David and I had just finished building our dream home. It was a labor of love, a testament to our shared vision and relentless hard work. My mother, bless her heart, hadn't contributed a single dime. The funds for our house came from my maternity leave savings, a substantial loan, and the generous support of David's parents. I never expected help from my mother, to be honest. Her world revolved around Mark. He was her poor, unfortunate boy, constantly battling against his supposedly useless wife and their demanding child. Without her, he simply couldn't cope. Meanwhile, I was raising 3 children of my own, largely without her attention or assistance. David and I had always envisioned a large family, and we knew an apartment wouldn't suffice. We wanted space, a yard for the kids to run free, and the privacy that only a standalone house could offer. We got married 6 years ago, and now we have 3 beautiful children. Our eldest, a spirited 4-year-old, our middle child, a curious 2-year-old, and our youngest, a sweet baby just under 6 months. Building this home was our commitment to their future, a foundation for the life we wanted to create together. David, a skilled contractor like his father, managed most of the construction himself. He hired the crew, oversaw every detail, and personally tackled many of the tasks. We only brought in outside specialists for electrical and gas work, areas where expertise was non-negotiable. David's parents, in a truly selfless act, sold their vacation home to contribute financially. We hadn't asked for such a sacrifice, but they insisted, saying they no longer had the energy for upkeep and that the money would be put to better use helping us. On top of their contribution, we took out a significant mortgage, and my maternity leave savings provided a crucial boost. My mother, however, had always dismissed our efforts. She'd shake her head, a condescending smirk playing on her lips, and declare we were wasting our time. Why bother with a house? She'd often say, her voice dripping with disdain. In an apartment, the janitor cleans the yard, the cleaning lady mops the hallways. Something breaks? You call maintenance, and they send someone. In a house, you're on your own. And you with 3 little ones? No, thank you. I wouldn't want to live in a house. Our opinion predictably shifted when the pandemic hit. By then, our first floor was fully completed, and we were well into the finishing touches on the second. We decided it was better to live amidst a bit of chaos than to be cooped up in a cramped apartment, unable to go outside. The kids would have gone stir-crazy. Instead, they had the freedom to play in our spacious yard. And for me, being pregnant at the time, the fresh air was a godsend. My mother came to stay with us when Mark fell ill. They suspected COVID, but he wasn't hospitalized. To protect his wife and child, he moved in with my mother, and we brought her to our house. While we awaited his test results, she lived with us. It was a temporary arrangement, but even then, her presence was a strain. She quickly discovered the joys of our home. "Oh, it's so lovely here," she exclaimed, her eyes wide with newfound appreciation. After the noisy, dusty city, it's like a fairy tale. Birds singing, fresh air, and I can step outside without a mask. Look at this huge yard. Eventually, Mark's COVID test came back negative, and my mother returned to her apartment. We couldn't have kept her much longer. We were already bursting at the seams with the second floor still under construction. It was clear, however, that her brief stay had planted a seed in her mind. It was during that time, I believe, that the idea of how to help her precious son without inconveniencing herself truly took root. Mark's housing situation had been a perpetual problem. He and his wife had been renting for years, seemingly unconcerned by their lack of a permanent home. Plenty of people rent. He'd shrug. At least we can pick up and move whenever we want. No regrets. Their money went to luxuries, gadgets, and entertainment. Mark and his wife were perfectly content with their lifestyle. But my mother, ever the martyr, constantly believed he was a victim, unable to secure a mortgage because of his spendthrift wife. Everything else was just an excuse. A mother's heart, she'd always say, knows best. So she decided she would give her apartment to Mark and move in with us. After all, we had a house. But the thought of living with my mother, sharing our kitchen, our space, our lives, was utterly unappealing. If there were a genuine emergency, perhaps, but to share my home out of some misguided sense of noble sacrifice? No, I told her directly, because all my subtle hints had been met with deliberate ignorance. How can you be like this? She fumed, her face reddening. David's parents helped you with your house, didn't they? So why should I help my son? David's parents helped us without infringing on anyone's space, I retorted, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. If they had offered to sell their house, give us the money, and then move in with us, I would have refused. But you know his situation. He can't rent forever, can he? If he doesn't want to rent and can't afford a mortgage, then he can live with you for a while, I suggested, knowing full well her aversion to such an arrangement. Oh, I can't stand his wife, she shrieked, her voice rising. We'd never get along. Then he can go to his mother-in-law's, I countered, a hint of sarcasm in my tone. As far as I know, she has a 3-bedroom apartment, and she lives alone. Oh, he'd just love that, living under the same roof as his mother-in-law. And do you think David would just love you living here? I shot back, my patience wearing thin. No matter how you look at it, you're a stranger to him. It's one thing to visit, another entirely to live here permanently. My mother scoffed, insisting that she was different, that she wouldn't interfere. But Mark, she claimed, would definitely be bothered by his mother-in-law. The hypocrisy was astounding. Frustrated, I called Mark, wanting to know if he was truly so entitled. But it turned out Mark knew nothing about my mother's grand plans. No way I'd move there, are you kidding? He exclaimed, genuinely surprised. Her place is so far out, I'd spend 2 hours commuting to work. It's fine for Mom, she's retired. My wife and I are actually thinking of moving to Florida. Her aunt lives there and we're sorting out the details now. So don't listen to Mom, she's just rambling. I called my mother back and relayed my conversation with Mark. He hadn't said it was a secret, right? My mother had no idea about his plans to move to Florida. She quickly ended the call and, I assume, immediately went to chew out Mark. But he's always been good at tuning her out. At least she was occupied and not draining my soul with her brilliant ideas. My only fear is that if Mark does move, she'll sell her apartment and follow him to another state, determined to meddle in his life. I can't imagine how his wife puts up with her. She's my own mother, but I can barely tolerate her. To have her as a mother-in-law, the thought alone is terrifying. But for now, peace and quiet had returned to our family. For now. But peace, as I've learned, is a fleeting illusion, especially when my mother is involved. The quiet didn't last. A few weeks later, she called, her voice saccharine sweet, a tone I've come to dread. Darling, she purred, I've been thinking. Since Mark is moving to Florida and my apartment will be empty, it seems a shame to just sell it, doesn't it? I mean, it's a perfectly good investment. And you know, with 3 children, you could really use the extra space. Perhaps for a home office or a playroom for the little ones. My blood ran cold. This was a new tactic, a more insidious form of manipulation. She wasn't offering to move in, not directly. She was offering her apartment, implying it would be a gift, but I knew better. There were always strings with my mother, invisible threads that would inevitably tighten around my neck. "What are you suggesting, Mom?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even, though my heart was pounding. "Well, dear, I thought you could take it over. Rent it out, perhaps? Or even use it for storage. It's in a lovely part of town, very convenient." She paused, letting the idea hang in the air, a poisoned apple disguised as a blessing. "Of course, I'd still be the owner, but you could manage it. And then, when I eventually decide to sell, you'd get a percentage for your troubles. Think of it as a little nest egg." I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. This wasn't about helping me. It was about maintaining control over her property while offloading the responsibility onto me and still finding a way to insert herself into my life. The apartment was a bargaining chip, a way to keep me tethered. I imagined the endless phone calls, the demands for updates, the criticisms of how I was managing her property. It was a trap, beautifully laid. "Mom, that's a very generous offer," I began, choosing my words carefully. "But David and I are really focused on our home here. We've put so much into it, and honestly, managing another property, even one you own, would be a huge undertaking. We just don't have the bandwidth right now." Her tone hardened instantly. "Bandwidth? What is that? Some new millennial excuse? It's an apartment, not a multinational corporation. I'm offering you a chance to make some extra money to secure your children's future, and you're talking about bandwidth?" Her voice rose, the sweetness gone, replaced by her familiar aggrieved whine. "I suppose you'd rather I just sell it and give all the money to Mark, wouldn't you? Is that what you want? For your poor brother to struggle while you sit in your big house doing nothing?" This was her classic move, guilt-tripping, pitting us against each other, always painting Mark as the victim and me as the selfish one. It was exhausting. "Mom, that's not fair," I said, my own patience fraying. "Mark is a grown man. He makes his own choices, and we're not doing nothing. We're raising 3 kids and building a life. We're not responsible for Mark's financial decisions." "Oh, so now you're blaming Mark?" She sniffed. "Typical. You always were jealous of him, always trying to undermine him. I'm not blaming anyone, Mom. I'm just saying no. We can't take on your apartment." I took a deep breath, trying to regain my composure. "Why don't you just sell it, or rent it out yourself? You're retired, you have plenty of time. Sell it," she gasped, as if I'd suggested something sacrilegious. "And lose all that potential income? No, that won't do. I need to think about my future, and Mark's future. He'll need a place to stay when he visits, won't he? Florida is so far." And there it was, the real reason. It wasn't about helping me, or even about Mark's future in Florida. It was about having a foothold, a reason to come back, a place to stay when she inevitably tired of Florida or Mark's new life. It was about maintaining her presence, her influence, her control. I felt a cold dread settle in my stomach. This woman was relentless. David, bless his heart, walked in just then, sensing the tension in my voice. He gave me a questioning look, and I mouthed, "Mom." He nodded, understanding. He'd seen this dance countless times. He took the phone from me, his presence a solid, comforting anchor in the storm of my mother's drama. "Hello, Mrs. Miller," he said, his voice calm and firm. "Everything all right?" I watched him, admiring his unwavering composure. He listened for a moment, then said, "I understand your concern for Mark, but Sarah and I have discussed this, and we're not in a position to manage another property right now. It's a generous thought, but we have our hands full with the kids and the house. Perhaps you could consider a property management company? They handle everything, and you still get the income." He listened again, his jaw tightening slightly. "With all due respect, Mrs. Miller, we're not looking for an investment opportunity. We're looking for peace and quiet. and we found it here in our own home. We wish you and Mark all the best with his move to Florida." He paused, then added, "Yes, we'll be sure to visit when things settle down. Goodbye." He hung up, a sigh escaping his lips. "She's trying to guilt trip you into taking her apartment, isn't she?" he asked, pulling me into a hug. "Don't worry, I handled it. She'll find another way to meddle, but it won't be through us." His words were reassuring, but I knew my mother. This was just a skirmish, not the end of the war. Her tactics might change, but her objective remained the same: to insert herself into our lives, to control, to manipulate. I knew I had to be vigilant. This wasn't just about an apartment, it was about setting boundaries, about protecting our family from her toxic influence. It was about finally breaking free from the emotional chains she'd forged over a lifetime, and I was ready for the fight. It's strange how these dark family secrets connect us. If this story is getting under your skin, subscribe for more real family exposés. The next few months were a tense truce. My mother, surprisingly, didn't press the apartment issue further. Instead, she focused her energy on Mark's move to Florida, a process that seemed to involve an inordinate amount of dramatic phone calls and complaints about the heat. David and I, meanwhile, reveled in the relative calm, pouring our energy into our children and our home. We even managed a short family vacation, a blissful week away from the constant hum of maternal interference. Then came the call from Aunt Carol. Aunt Carol was my mother's younger sister, a woman who had always been the black sheep of the family, too independent, too outspoken, too unwilling to play by my mother's rules. She lived a quiet life a few states away, rarely interacting with the family drama, which suited me just fine. Her call, therefore, was unexpected. "Sarah, honey, I need to tell you something," she began, her voice hushed, almost conspiratorial. "It's about your mother and Mark." My stomach clenched. I braced myself for another round of family theatrics. "What is it, Aunt Carol?" "Your mother, she didn't just decide to give Mark her apartment," Carol said, a tremor in her voice. "She's been secretly funding his lifestyle for years. His struggles with money? Most of it was a show. Your mother was paying his rent, his car payments, even his wife's shopping sprees. She even paid for their last vacation to the Caribbean, not just Florida." The words hit me like a physical blow. It wasn't just the apartment. It was everything. The constant favoritism, the endless excuses for Mark, the subtle digs at my own financial independence, it all clicked into place. My mother hadn't just been enabling Mark. She had been actively sabotaging his ability to stand on his own 2 feet, all while painting him as a victim and me as the ungrateful daughter. The sheer scale of the deception, the years of lies, left me breathless. "Why, Aunt Carol?" I finally managed to whisper, the question a raw ache in my throat. "Why would she do that?" "Control, Sarah. Pure and simple control," Carol sighed. She always saw Mark as her project, her way of staying relevant. You were too independent, too successful. You didn't need her in the same way, and that drove her crazy. So she created a need with Mark, a dependency she could exploit. Carol went on to explain that she had stumbled upon the truth accidentally, overhearing a heated argument between my mother and Mark during a rare family gathering. Mark, it seemed, was tired of the charade, tired of living under his mother's thumb, even if it meant financial comfort. He wanted to break free to truly start fresh in Florida, away from her suffocating influence. His move wasn't just about his wife's aunt, it was an escape. He told her he was cutting her off, Carol revealed. No more money, no more interference. He wanted to make it on his own. That's why she suddenly decided to give him the apartment, a last-ditch effort to maintain some leverage, some control over his life. And when he refused, that's when she turned to you. The revelation was a seismic shift in my understanding of my family. My mother wasn't just a meddling parent. She was a master manipulator, weaving a web of deceit that had ensnared us all. Mark wasn't just a spoiled brother. He was a victim of her relentless need for control, albeit a willing one for a time. And I'd been so focused on protecting my own family from her direct interference that I hadn't seen the deeper, more insidious game she was playing. I thanked Aunt Carol, my mind reeling. The conversation ended, but its echoes reverberated through my thoughts. I felt a strange mix of anger, betrayal, and a perverse sense of clarity. The pieces of the puzzle were finally fitting together, revealing a picture far darker than I had ever imagined. This wasn't just about an apartment or a move. It was about a lifetime of manipulation, a family built on secrets and lies. I knew then that I couldn't just let this go. I had to confront her, not just for myself, but for Mark, for my children, for the truth. The emotional core of our family was rotten, and it was time to expose it. This moment shattered everything I knew. If you're feeling this shock too, hit like. It helps uncover more hidden family truths. I still lie awake wondering, what would you have done when they tried to control your body? Share your truth in the comments. Subscribe for more shocking family revelations. The aftermath of that confrontation was a strange, unsettling quiet. My mother didn't scream, didn't rage, didn't even try to argue further. She simply sat there, a crumpled figure on her pristine sofa, and watched me leave. The silence that followed was deafening, a stark contrast to the years of emotional noise she had generated. For days, I waited for the inevitable barrage of angry phone calls, the tearful pleas, the manipulative messages. But nothing came. It was as if a vital, albeit toxic, part of my life had simply ceased to exist. David was immensely proud. "You did it, Sarah," he'd said, pulling me close. "You finally stood up for yourself, for us." His support was a balm to my raw nerves, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this fight. The children, oblivious to the seismic shift in our family dynamics, continued to fill our home with laughter and chaos, a vibrant counterpoint to the heavy silence that now surrounded my mother. Mark called a week later, his voice hesitant. "Carol told me you talked to Mom." "She's not doing so well." "What do you mean, not doing so well?" I asked, a flicker of concern quickly extinguished by a surge of resentment. Had she already started her new act? Was this another ploy to draw us back in? "She's just quiet," he explained. "She's not calling me every day, not complaining about Florida, not even asking about the apartment. She just sounds defeated." He paused. "I think you really got through to her, Sarah." "You broke something." His words resonated with a chilling truth. I hadn't just confronted her, I had dismantled her carefully constructed world. Her power had always stemmed from our emotional dependence, our willingness to play our assigned roles in her drama. By refusing to participate, by drawing a firm line, I had stripped her of her audience, her puppets. And without them, she was lost. It wasn't a victory that brought me joy, but a profound sense of melancholy. She was still my mother, after all, and seeing her broken, even by my own hand, was a heavy burden. But it was a necessary one. For too long, her emotional needs had dictated the terms of our family's happiness. It was time for a new chapter, one where our well-being took precedence. Mark, surprisingly, seemed to be thriving in Florida. Freed from his mother's constant interference and financial crutches, he had taken a new job, one he was genuinely excited about, and was actively looking for a house with his wife. He even sounded happier, lighter. The weight of his mother's expectations, it seemed, had been as suffocating for him as it had been for me. "She called me yesterday," he admitted, a wry chuckle in his voice. "Asked if I needed any help with the down payment for the house." I told her no. Told her we were doing it ourselves. She didn't argue, just said, "That's nice, dear." It was weird. "Good for you, Mark," I said, a genuine smile finally touching my lips. "Good for both of us." The path to healing was long, and the scars of our past would undoubtedly remain. But for the first time in my life, I felt a sense of genuine autonomy, of freedom from the invisible chains that had bound me. Our home, once a battleground, was now truly a sanctuary. My children would grow up in an environment free from the subtle manipulations and emotional blackmail that had defined my own childhood. We were building something new, something healthier, brick by painful brick. I still lie awake wondering, what would you have done when they tried to control your body? Share your truth in the comments. Subscribe for more shocking family revelations. The weeks that followed my mother's silent defeat were a strange blend of relief and lingering anxiety. The air in our home felt lighter, as if a heavy shroud had been lifted. David and I found ourselves exchanging glances of quiet understanding, a shared sense of victory in the small battles we had won. Our children, bless their innocent hearts, thrived in the newfound tranquility. 4-year-old Lily, with her boundless energy, would chase after our 2-year-old twins, Ben and Mia, in the sprawling backyard, their laughter echoing through the trees. The baby, Leo, gurgled contentedly in his swing, oblivious to the emotional warfare that had once threatened to engulf his nascent world. Yet, beneath the surface of this newfound peace, a subtle unease persisted within me. Years of my mother's manipulation had left an indelible mark, a constant vigilance against the next attack. I found myself scrutinizing every phone call, every unexpected email, half expecting her to resurface with a new, more insidious scheme. It was a phantom limb of anxiety, a habit of self-preservation that was difficult to shed. David, ever perceptive, noticed my lingering tension. "You're still waiting for the other shoe to drop, aren't you?" he'd asked one evening, as we sat on our porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple. His arm was around me, his presence a comforting weight. I leaned into him, drawing strength from his calm. "It's hard to just switch it off," I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. "She's been a constant presence, a force of nature for so long. Even her silence feels like a tactic." He squeezed my shoulder. "I know, honey, but you did it. You broke the cycle. And we're stronger for it. Our kids are stronger for it." His words were a lifeline, anchoring me to the present, to the reality of our beautiful, hard-won life. It wasn't just about my mother anymore, it was about the legacy we were building for our children. I didn't want them to inherit the same emotional baggage, the same patterns of manipulation and resentment that had defined my own upbringing. I wanted them to know what unconditional love felt like, what healthy boundaries looked like. This was my chance to rewrite our family's narrative. Mark's call had been another unexpected twist. His voice, usually tinged with a subtle whine or a hint of self-pity, had sounded different. Later, as I'd noted, he'd confessed that Aunt Carol had filled him in on my confrontation with Mom, and for the first time, he hadn't sounded angry or defensive. Instead, there was a quiet understanding, almost a respect. "She's been calling me less too," he'd admitted, a slight chuckle in his voice. "It's weird. Like, I actually have to make my own decisions now. And pay for my own stuff." I'd laughed, a genuine unburdened laugh. "Welcome to adulthood, little brother." Yeah, he'd grumbled good-naturedly. "But seriously, Sarah, thanks. I think I needed someone to shake things up. Mom had me so convinced I couldn't do anything without her. It was easier to just let her handle everything, even if it meant living in her shadow." His honesty was disarming. For years, I'd resented Mark, seen him as the golden child, the one who effortlessly received all of my mother's attention and financial support. I had viewed him as complicit in her schemes, a willing participant in his own infantilization. But hearing him speak, truly speak, about his own struggles, I realized the extent of my mother's damage. She hadn't just controlled us, she had stunted us, preventing us from growing into fully autonomous adults. "So, Florida's working out?" I'd asked, genuinely curious. "It is, actually," he'd replied, a note of surprise in his voice. Ashley's aunt helped me get a job at a local construction company. It's not glamorous, but it's honest work, and I'm learning a lot. And Ashley, she's amazing. She's really stepped up, found a great job in marketing. We're actually saving for a down payment on a house. A small one, but it'll be ours. My heart swelled with a complex mix of emotions. Pride for Mark, for finally breaking free. Sadness for the years lost, the relationship strained by our mother's machinations, and a renewed sense of purpose. If Mark could find his way, then perhaps there was hope for our family after all. Perhaps we could, slowly, painstakingly, rebuild something healthier from the ashes of her destructive influence. I found myself reflecting on the nature of family, on the invisible threads that bind us, for better or worse. My mother's actions had been a constant source of pain, but they'd also inadvertently forged a stronger bond between David and me. They'd forced me to define my own boundaries, to articulate my own needs, to fight for the sanctity of my own home and family. It was a harsh lesson, but a necessary one. One afternoon, while the kids were napping, I sat down with my old journals. I hadn't looked at them in years, not since before David and I started building the house. Flipping through the pages, I saw a younger, more insecure version of myself, constantly seeking my mother's approval, constantly trying to measure up to an impossible standard. The entries were filled with anxieties about Mark, about my mother's criticisms, about my own perceived failures. But as I read on, I saw a gradual shift. The entries became more confident, more self-assured. The focus moved from my mother's expectations to my own dreams, my own aspirations. The turning point I realized was when David and I decided to build our house. It wasn't just a physical structure, it was a declaration of independence, a tangible manifestation of our commitment to each other and to our future. I closed the journal, a sense of peace settling over me. The past was still there, etched into the pages of my memory, but it no longer held the same power. I'd faced my demons, confronted the source of my pain, and emerged stronger. The battle wasn't entirely over, I knew. My mother, in her own way, would always be a part of my life. But now I had the tools, the strength, and the unwavering support of my husband to navigate whatever new challenges she might present. I was no longer a pawn in her game. I was the architect of my own destiny. I still lie awake wondering, what would you have done when they tried to control your body? Share your truth in the comments. Subscribe for more shocking family revelations. The fragile peace that had settled over our family wasn't without its tremors. My mother, though silent, remained a looming presence in my thoughts. It was like living in a house after a storm. The immediate danger had passed, but the structural integrity felt perpetually compromised. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant siren sent a jolt of anxiety through me. I found myself overcompensating, pouring even more energy into creating a perfect, unassailable haven for my children. I organized playdates, volunteered at their preschool, and meticulously planned family outings, as if a flawless facade could ward off any lingering negativity. David, ever the grounding force, gently reminded me to breathe. "You don't have to prove anything, Sarah," he'd say, finding me late at night, poring over parenting books or cleaning a spotless kitchen. Our home's already perfect because it's filled with love, not because it's free of dust. His words were a quiet balm, a reminder that my worth wasn't tied to my ability to maintain an impossible standard of perfection. He understood that my drive, my almost obsessive need for control over our immediate environment, was a direct response to the chaos my mother had always sown. My conversations with Mark became more frequent and, surprisingly, more genuine. He was still in Florida, still working hard, and still navigating the complexities of his newfound independence. He'd call, sometimes just to vent about a difficult day at work, other times to share a small victory, like finally getting approved for a mortgage. It was a revelation, this new relationship with my brother. Stripped of our mother's interference, we were slowly, tentatively building a bridge across the chasm she had created between us. It said one evening, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. I always thought you had it easy. The smart one, the responsible one, the one Mom didn't have to worry about. I never realized how much pressure that put on you. I'd been taken aback. And I always thought you were the favored one, the one who got everything handed to him, I confessed. A raw honesty surfacing that had been buried for decades. I resented you for it, for the attention she gave you, the excuses she made. We were both wrong, weren't we? He mused. She needed us to be something for her. You, the perfect daughter who validated her parenting. Me, the helpless son who needed her constant rescue. We were just characters in her story. His insight was profound, and it resonated deeply. We had both been trapped, albeit in different roles, in her elaborate psychological drama. The realization brought a strange sense of camaraderie, a shared understanding that transcended years of sibling rivalry and unspoken resentments. It was a fragile truce, but a truce nonetheless, built in the rubble of our mother's shattered illusions. One day, a letter arrived. It wasn't from my mother, but from a lawyer's office. My heart leaped into my throat, a cold dread washing over me. Had she found a new way to strike? Was this some legal maneuver, a last-ditch effort to reclaim control? I tore open the envelope, my hands trembling. It was a formal notification. My mother had sold her apartment. Not to Mark, not to me, but to an anonymous buyer. And the proceeds, after paying off a small outstanding loan, had been placed into a trust. A trust for her grandchildren. My children. And Mark's future children, should he have any. The shock was immense. It was so utterly unlike her, so completely unexpected. There was no mention of conditions, no strings attached, no demands for visitation or control. Just a simple, straightforward legal document outlining a future for her grandchildren that she would not, apparently, be directly involved in shaping. I called Mark immediately, my voice thick with disbelief. Did you know about this? The trust? Yeah, she mentioned it a while ago, he said, sounding surprisingly calm. After our last big fight, when I told her I was done with her money. She said she wanted to do something meaningful with the apartment, something that wasn't about her. I didn't really believe her, to be honest. Figured it was another trick. But it's not, I whispered, staring at the official letter in my hand. It's real. Yeah, he said, a hint of wonder in his voice. Maybe she actually listened this time. Maybe she finally understood. It was a tentative hope, a fragile seedling pushing through hardened earth. Had my confrontation, had Mark's declaration of independence, truly broken through her defenses? Had she, in her own convoluted way, finally acknowledged the damage she had wrought? I didn't know. I might never truly know her motivations, but for the first time, I felt a glimmer of something akin to peace, a sense that perhaps, just like manipulation, had finally been broken. The trust wasn't a gesture of reconciliation, not in the traditional sense. There was no apology, no heartfelt confession. It was a silent acknowledgement, a concession of defeat perhaps, but also a strange, almost impersonal act of love. It was her way of providing without controlling. It was a new boundary, drawn not by me, but by her, in her own peculiar fashion. And in that, there was a profound, if bittersweet, victory. Our lives continued, but with a new undercurrent of quiet strength. David and I grew even closer, our shared experiences forging an unbreakable bond. Our children flourished, their innocence protected, their future secured in ways I could only have dreamed of. Mark and I continued to build our fragile new relationship, two survivors of a shared emotional battlefield, learning to navigate the world without the constant shadow of our mother's influence. I still lie awake wondering, what would you have done when they tried to control your body? Share your truth in the comments. Subscribe for more shocking family revelations. The trust fund, while a surprising and undeniably generous gesture, didn't erase the past. It was a peace offering, perhaps, but not an apology. I realized in the quiet moments of reflection that I didn't need an apology from her anymore. My healing wasn't dependent on her remorse, but on my own acceptance and my ability to move forward. The emotional scars remained, faint but present, a reminder of the battles fought and the strength discovered. They were a part of my story, a testament to the resilience I hadn't known I possessed. Life settled into a new rhythm. The children grew, their personalities blossoming with each passing day. Lily, our eldest, inherited my fierce independence, often challenging me with insightful questions that mirrored my own youthful defiance. Ben and Mia, the twins, were a whirlwind of complementary energies. Ben, the quiet observer, Mia, the boisterous leader. And little Leo, now a toddler, was a sunny, joyful presence. His innocence a constant reminder of the purity we fought to protect. David and I found a deeper connection in the aftermath of the family drama. We have faced a formidable adversary together and emerged stronger, our partnership forged in the fires of adversity. He was not just my husband, he was my confidant, my co-conspirator in building a life free from the shadows of the past. We learned to communicate with an unspoken understanding, anticipating each other's needs, offering support without having to ask. Our evenings, once filled with the quiet tension of unspoken worries, now hummed with the comfortable rhythm of shared dreams and contented silence. Mark's transformation was perhaps the most astonishing. He truly embraced his new life in Florida, shedding the skin of the perpetual victim. He and Ashley bought a modest house, a fixer-upper that they poured their weekends into, transforming it into a home that was truly their own. He'd send me pictures, beaming with pride, of a freshly painted wall or a newly installed fixture. He even started a small side business, using his construction skills to help neighbors with home repairs. A far cry from the entitled brother who once relied solely on our mother's handouts. "It's amazing, Sarah," he'd said during one of our now regular video calls, his face tanned and relaxed. "I never thought I'd actually enjoy working. But it's different when it's for yourself, when you're building something real." Ashley, too, seemed to flourish. She'd always been a quiet, unassuming presence, overshadowed by my mother's domineering personality and Mark's passive resistance. But in Florida, she found her voice, her confidence. Her marketing job thrived, and she became an active member of their new community, volunteering at local events and making friends. They were, for the first time, a truly independent unit, a testament to the power of distance and self-reliance. My mother, on the other hand, remained an enigma. We heard snippets through Aunt Carol, who, despite her earlier role as truth-teller, maintained a cautious distance. My mother had apparently taken up painting, a hobby she'd never expressed an interest in before. Her apartment, once a shrine to her meticulous order, was now filled with canvases and the faint scent of turpentine. She traveled occasionally, small trips to quiet coastal towns, always alone. She never called, never wrote, never attempted to re-enter our lives in the way she once had. It was a strange, almost unsettling silence, a void where once there had been a storm. Sometimes, a pang of sadness would hit me. Was she truly happy? Had she found peace in her solitude? Or was she simply a broken woman, stripped of her power, left to wander the quiet corridors of her own making? I didn't know, and I've realized, with a surprising sense of liberation, that I didn't need to know. Her journey was her own. My journey, and the journey of my family, was ours. The trust fund, while a comfort, also brought its own set of responsibilities. David and I meticulously managed it, ensuring it would provide a solid foundation for our children's education and future endeavors. It was a tangible legacy, a reminder that even from the most tangled roots, something good could grow. We taught our children about financial responsibility, about the value of hard work, and about the importance of using resources wisely. We wanted them to understand that true wealth wasn't just about money, but about integrity, resilience, and the strength of family bonds. I often thought about the concept of control. My mother had craved it, wielded it like a weapon, believing it would bring her happiness and security. but in the end, it only brought her isolation. I too had sought control, but my quest was different. I sought control over my own narrative, over the boundaries of my own life, over the emotional landscape of my family. And in that pursuit, I'd found not just peace, but a profound sense of empowerment. The house, our beautiful, hard-won home, became more than just bricks and mortar. It was a symbol of our defiance, our independence, our commitment to a different kind of family. It was a place where laughter echoed freely, where arguments were resolved with open communication, and where love was given unconditionally, without the heavy weight of expectation or manipulation. It was our sanctuary, our fortress, built not just with wood and stone, but with courage, resilience, and an unwavering belief in the power of truth. I still lie awake wondering, what would you have done when they tried to control your body? Share your truth in the comments. Subscribe for more shocking family revelations. As the years passed, the initial shock of my mother's unexpected gesture faded, replaced by a more nuanced understanding. The trust fund, while a comfort, also served as a constant, quiet reminder of the complex woman she was. It was a final act of control, perhaps, but one that ultimately benefited us, rather than binding us. It was her way of being present, without actually being present, a ghost of her influence that was both benevolent and unsettling. Our children, now older, began to ask questions. Lily, with her keen observational skills, once asked, "Mom, why does Grandma never visit? All my friends' grandmas come over for holidays." It was a simple question, but it cut deep, forcing me to confront the narrative I carefully constructed for them. I couldn't lie, but I also couldn't burden them with the full weight of our family's history. So I chose my words carefully, explaining that sometimes families have complicated relationships and that love can exist even when people need their space. "Grandma loves you very much," I told her, "but she's a very independent person and she likes her own space. And we love her too, but we also need our space." It was a simplified truth, but one that seemed to satisfy her for the moment. I hoped that as they grew older, they would understand the complexities and perhaps even forgive the flaws of their grandmother. Mark and Ashley, now firmly established in Florida, continued to thrive. They had a second child, a little girl named Clara, who brought even more joy and chaos into their lives. Mark had even started his own small construction company, specializing in sustainable building practices, a passion he discovered after years of working for others. He was a different man, confident and self-assured, a far cry from the perpetually struggling brother I had known. Our video calls were no longer about our mother, but about our lives, our children, our dreams. We were siblings, finally, in the truest sense of the word. You know, Mark had said during a recent call, "I think Mom actually did us a favor in a weird way. If she hadn't been so intense, I probably never would have left her shadow. I would have just kept taking her money, letting her run my life. And I would have missed out on all of this." He gestured around his bustling home, a happy cacophony of children's laughter and the aroma of Ashley's cooking. "I wouldn't trade it for anything." His words resonated with my own feelings. The pain my mother had inflicted had, paradoxically, forced me to grow, to define myself outside of her expectations. It had pushed me to build a stronger, more resilient family with David, a family founded on open communication and mutual respect. The lessons learned were hard-won, but invaluable. I often thought about the concept of forgiveness. Could I forgive my mother for the years of manipulation, the emotional toll she had taken? It wasn't a simple yes or no. Forgiveness, I realized, wasn't about forgetting or condoning her actions. It was about releasing myself from the burden of resentment, about choosing peace over bitterness. It was a process, an ongoing journey, not a destination. One day, a package arrived. It was small, wrapped in plain brown paper, and addressed to me in my mother's familiar, elegant script. My heart fluttered with a mix of apprehension and curiosity. It had been years since I'd received anything directly from her. Inside, nestled amongst layers of tissue paper, was a small, intricately painted ceramic bird. It was beautiful, delicate, and utterly unlike anything I would have expected from her. There was no note, no explanation, just the bird. I held it in my hand, turning it over and over, 1,000 questions swirling in my mind. Was it an olive branch? A silent apology? A final enigmatic message? I didn't know. But as I placed it on the mantelpiece, amidst the photos of my laughing children and my steadfast husband, I felt a strange sense of closure. It was a reminder that even the most complex relationships can hold unexpected beauty and that sometimes the most profound messages are delivered in silence. The bird became a quiet symbol in our home, a testament to the intricate tapestry of family, with all its flaws and unexpected threads of grace. It reminded me that while we cannot choose our past, we can choose how we respond to it, how we shape our present, and how we build our future. And in that choice, there was immense power, immense freedom. Our home, once a refuge from a storm, had become a beacon. A place where our children learned not just to survive, but to thrive. A place where love was abundant, boundaries were respected, and individuality was celebrated. It was the legacy I wanted to leave, a testament to the enduring strength of a family that had faced its demons and emerged, not unscathed, but undeniably whole. I still lie awake wondering, what would you have done when they tried to control your body? Share your truth in the comments. Subscribe for more shocking family revelations. That ceramic bird, a silent messenger from a complicated past, became a touchstone. Sometimes, when the children were asleep and the house was quiet, I would pick it up, tracing the delicate lines of its painted wings. It wasn't just a gift, it was a symbol of the unspoken, the unresolved, the enduring complexities of a mother-daughter bond. It reminded me that even in the deepest estrangement, there could be a flicker of connection, a faint echo of love, however flawed or distorted. My own parenting style, I realized, was deeply influenced by my mother's. Not in imitation, but in fierce opposition. Where she had sought control, I strived for autonomy. Where she had fostered dependence, I encouraged independence. I made a conscious effort to listen to my children, truly listen, to validate their feelings, and to empower them to make their own choices, even if those choices sometimes led to scraped knees or minor disappointments. I wanted them to know that their worth was inherent, not conditional on my approval or their adherence to my expectations. David often observed this, sometimes with a gentle smile, other times with a thoughtful frown. "You're so determined to be different from your mom," he'd commented once, "that sometimes you forget to just be yourself." It was a profound observation, and it made pause. Was I reacting to her or truly acting from my own authentic self? The line, I discovered, was often blurred. It was a constant dance, a delicate balance between learning from the past and forging a new path. One evening, as I tucked Leo into bed, he asked, "Mommy, why do grandmas give presents?" I smiled, thinking of the ceramic bird. Grandmas give presents because they love you, sweetie. And sometimes presents are just a way of saying, "I'm thinking of you," even when they can't be here. It was a simple answer, but it felt true. My mother's gift, in its silent, enigmatic way, was a testament to a love that, despite everything, still existed. The journey of healing was not a straight line, but a winding path, full of unexpected turns and moments of profound realization. I learned that true strength wasn't about cutting off all ties, but about establishing healthy ones. It was about recognizing that while some relationships might never be what you hoped for, they could still hold value, still offer lessons, still contribute to the intricate tapestry of who you are. My mother had taught me resilience, boundaries, and the unwavering importance of protecting my own family. And for that, in a strange, complicated way, I was grateful. Our home continued to be a vibrant hub of life, a testament to the choices we had made, the battles we had won, and the love that bound us together. It was a place where stories were told, laughter was shared, and dreams were nurtured. And in its heart, the ceramic bird sat, a silent sentinel, a reminder of the past, and a quiet promise for the future. I still lie awake wondering, what would you have done when they tried to control your body? Share your truth in the comments. Subscribe for more shocking family revelations.